Welcome to hour number 2 of 3 Live right here on this Tuesday on the early line on SportsGrid. I am Ben Stevens. Davis Maddock in today, filling in for Donnie Rightside. We've got 2 more hours to go up until 11 a.m. Eastern time. Davis, Super Wild Card weekend and the National Football League playoffs coming to a close yesterday. The final 8 in the NFL have now all each earned their spot still in the chase for a Lombardi Trophy and a spot in Super Bowl 58. We will set the stage for divisional weekend, one of the best 2 days of NFL football you will see all year long. So 8 teams, Davis, still in the hunt for a Super Bowl championship. That means the 24 other clubs around the NFL already looking forward to 2024 firmly in the offseason.
That is definitely the case. I mean, I was doing the mental math today of these 8 teams, and I was just like, without even looking at the markets with our friends over at the FanDuel Sportsbook, what do I think the probability that one of San Francisco or Baltimore ends up pulling the Lombardi Trophy up? I mean, honestly, no disrespect intended to the Green Bay Packers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or the Detroit Lions, but like, come on. The 49ers, it just all opened up for the 49ers. With the Eagles, basically turning into the bad news Bears and the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, we need to spend more time talking about that. We did not talk about that Cowboys-Packers game enough. It's just like really, really, really embarrassing stuff for the Dallas Cowboys and really positive stuff. The Green Bay Packers are the youngest team in the NFL. That feels to me like maybe it's been a little bit under discussed, but like the literal youngest team in the NFL winning a road playoff game, it's like, there's not really many great historical comparables for something like that happening. But it just like the 49ers Super Bowl equity has got to be like 50%. I guess you'd make them, they'd probably be a 2.5 point dog in the Super Bowl to the Ravens. So I guess you give them like 40%, 45% Super Bowl equity, but it really has opened up for them.
We welcome in that SportsGrid Radio audience here to our second hour live on a Tuesday on the early line. He is Davis. I am Ben. You are listening on Sirius XM, channel 159. All of our radio terrestrial affiliates now in the mix as well. So for 24 NFL teams, the focus is on the offseason, and a storyline, at least in the early portions of this offseason, Davis, will be focused around Bill Belichick, his future in the National Football League, where he will coach in 2024 after a 24-year run at the helm of the New England Patriots, where with New England, he knocked off the Atlanta Falcons back during the 2018 NFL season and that Super Bowl championship. And the Atlanta Falcons, when Bill Belichick's future was up in the air in New England, they were floated as one of those potential destinations for Bill Belichick. Well, yesterday, the Atlanta Falcons doing their due diligence, conducting their first interview with Bill Belichick. As Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network, Davis, is reporting, no deal is imminent. We are not close to a signing on a bottom line by any means, but the mutual interest is there between the Falcons and Belichick.
There is some mutual interest, I guess. I don't really get it from either perspective. I don't get why the Falcons think that Bill Belichick would be the right guy to turn them around, other than you're Arthur Blank and you think, I've been a laughingstock since Shanahan left. We ran out, Matt Ryan, who was the best quarterback since Michael Vick, really the last time. Really, I guess we've been a laughingstock since 28-3. So maybe I just get some reverse mojo by bringing in the guy that did that to me. I guess I get that. And then if you're Belichick, I'm looking at all these rosters. I'm looking at all these available teams. I mean, look, I think I've gone back and forth on this. Like the Chargers job is like, okay, well, you already have the quarterback. If you're the Chargers, you don't really have anything else. You don't really have any wide receivers. You don't really have an offensive line. You don't really have any fans, but the hard part is the quarterback. If you get the quarterback, everything else will kind of coalesce around that. And a lot of these other openings, there's no quarterback, and that's why there are the openings. I guess I would do the Belichick thing if he said, I don't want any personnel control, and I'll hire whoever you want as the offensive coordinator. I'll bring in some genius as the offensive coordinator. If it was up to me, if I was, a multi-billionaire and I got to be out here making these decisions, I would be calling Ben Johnson's agent every day. Actually, you know what I would do? I think I would try and get Lincoln Riley away from USC because I don't really know what his plan is. They finish 7-5. It's like the whole college football ecosystem is falling apart, and you're not even close. I mean, USC is so far away from the top of the mountain, Ben. They are so far away that even with all the NIL money, I don't know the next time they get a Caleb Williams style prospect to come there. But I want someone like that, and I want a quarterback. And then you're ready-made. The Falcons' defense is already good. Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan, you are ready to score points. Yeah. But I don't think Bill Belichick is the guy. I don't think he's the straw that stirs that drink.
It is really interesting to think of what Bill Belichick would do with this young roster. But, of course, the quarterback, the main position the Atlanta Falcons need to address. They will have a pick early on in the opening round of the 2024 NFL Draft. You would expect the focus for the Falcons this offseason to be on solidifying that quarterback spot. It's not Desmond Ridder or Taylor Heineke, probably the guy moving forward. What will Miami do with their quarterback spot of the future? GM in South Florida, Chris Greer, saying earlier this week, Davis, after the Dolphins were bounced on Saturday from the playoffs in Kansas City by the Chiefs, that he still hopes that Tua Tagovailoa is the quarterback of the future and they can keep him in Miami long term. What do you ultimately believe the Dolphins decide around Tua Tagovailoa's future as the Fins QB?
Well, I don't really think they've got a choice this offseason, given the nature of how their salary cap is distributed. They pay him. He will cost $23 million against the cap this upcoming season, and then they can decide on him. And so I think that you keep him. I mean, $23 million for a quarterback sounds like a lot of money. And obviously it is a lot of money, but for a quarterback, that is like no money, So you just have to run it back. I think it seems like their biggest thing they got to add is they got to figure out a tight end. You can't have Durham Smythe and Julian Hill being your tight ends. It's like you need a third guy. Cedric Wilson, Braxton Berrios, like they need another guy to kind of take, because it seemed like Jalen Waddle really wasn't even capable of being just the second guy. So you kind of need another complementary piece there. I think A-Chain, is actually a huge piece for them. And if he can stay healthy, but I could talk about this forever. I find the Dolphins situation fascinating. The one thing I would not do is I would not let Mike McDaniel stop calling plays. That would be like a huge mistake, I think.
We will see what they do with Tua Tagovailoa. As we shared at the start of the show, Caleb Williams officially declaring for the 2024 NFL Draft as well. More TEL up next. Sat down with Nick Saban for a lengthy interview. You have spoken to Nick Saban multiple times throughout his career. How surprised were you?
He's not going anywhere, I don't believe. And at the end of the day, very surprised. Athletic department surprised. Talked to a few people, Alabama folks, late last night, early this morning. Very surprised. Didn't see it coming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev.
Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division favorite.
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby. The money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted them out. They still wanted them gone.
Mike Shula,
Mike Shula was a disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move By the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those two plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars have, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression. It's not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
The PGA Tour season here in 2024 now officially underway. Last week at the Sony Open, it was the first full field event of this year on the PGA Tour. Now we head from Hawaii back to the mainland, out to La Quinta, California for the American Express. Ben Stevens and Davis Maddock getting you ready for the outright odds this week, where Davis, an interesting format at the American Express. It's played at PGA West, but technically at 3 different golf courses, 3 different properties, 2 courses at PGA West and over at La Quinta Country Club as well. So a week in the desert out in California. Davis, what do people need to know about these tracks that will set the stage for the American Express here in 2024?
Well, I suppose what they need to know is that generally this event plays pretty easy relative to a PGA Tour event. The stadium course is super easy. La Quinta is not particularly difficult. And then the Nicklaus course out at PGA West is of the 3 that they play is, I suppose, the hardest of the 3. It's a pretty unique format where the cut does not come until Sunday. So already this season, we have had a no-cut event. We've had a standard event where you play Thursday, Friday. The cut happens on Friday afternoon. Now what happens is everyone is going to play 3 rounds. Obviously, you play one day at all 3 of the tournaments, and then we get the final round on Sunday. It's also a Pro-Am, which means it's not that great for TV. The shot tracker does not work that well, and your round is going to take about 6 hours, which it makes betting on these events kind of hard, by the way. You know, it's like it's just the sweat is going to be a little bit more difficult, but at least because all these guys are out on 3 different courses, we don't have the thing that just absolutely plagued the PGA Tour last year, Ben. I don't know how much you bet on like individual like matchups and stuff, but last year, the PGA Tour kept having to suspend rounds for darkness, and it would mess everything up. It would mess head-to-head releases on, FanDuel. Yeah. Like they can't release because they don't know who's playing, and it would mess up my spreadsheets. It was a real nightmare. I hope the PGA Tour takes all of that stuff more seriously. And then I guess actually probably the most important thing to mention is that this is like a relatively strong field. We've gotten so used in the era of live golf where the fields are not that strong, and we're heading into an event and Adam Hadwin is like the 3rd favorite to win. Not the case this week. We do have a real field of high level golfers playing.
Yeah. And Davis, I think that's where we start because the first three names on the outright odds are names that anybody that even knows golf relatively well is rather familiar with. Scottie Scheffler booked as the favorite for the American Express in 2024, plus 550. Patrick Cantlay, not all that far behind at 9-1. Xander Schauffele, 11-1 before we drop off to Sung Jae Im at 20-1 and Justin Thomas there at 22-1. That is the top five of this leaderboard for the outright odds. 54-hole cut, which means, as Davis said, everybody will play up until Saturday to get a sample of the three tracks played at the American Express. Davis, let's start with the very top of this odds board. Scottie Scheffler plus 550. When somebody has such a short price relative for a 72-hole golf tournament on the PGA Tour, is that too short to dive into, or can you still find some value on Scheffler?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can still find value on Scottie Scheffler. So Scottie Scheffler last season, basically won or finished second in most of the events that he played. So he won the Players' Championship. He won the Phoenix Open. He T2'd at the PGA, the U.S. Open. Got third at the Charles Schwab Challenge, like the Tour champ. Like, he is unbelievable. And the tools that I use most often to bet golf are our friends over at Data Golf. We've had a long partnership with them in conjunction with the old Daily Roto. They actually have Scottie Scheffler listed with a true probability in their math of plus 472 odds to win the tournament. If you break that down into an implied percentage, that is 17.5% of the time that this tournament is played, Scottie Scheffler wins. Our friends over at the FanDuel Sportsbook have him listed with an implied probability of winning 15% of the time, American odds of plus 550. That means, theoretically, obviously, if you believe in all this math, that actually is just a profitable wager. Now, I think there are a couple things you can do when you want to bet a really heavy favorite like that in golf. I mean, obviously, a profitable wager is a profitable wager. Now, for me, Ben, I like the sweat. I like to bet 100-1. That's just me, right? So the thing you can do is, one, you can bet it like a football game. So whatever your golf unit size is, you just disregard that and you make it your football unit size, right? So it's like, this is what I'm betting on the Chiefs money line this weekend. Instead, actually, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bet that on Scottie Scheffler. Or the thing I really love to do is you throw it in parlays, right? So it's like, all right, we got Scottie Scheffler to win on the PGA this week, and we also have the Bills to cover 2.5 versus the Chiefs, or whatever it might be. And as you might expect, with all of that win equity up top, a lot of the other guys that look like really solid wagers this week are much further down the board.
Yeah, Scottie Scheffler has already played one event this year at the Century. It's a limited field event with champions and best finishers from the previous PGA Tour season. He finished T5. Last year on the PGA Tour, 23 events for Scheffler, 2 wins, 2 runners-up, 17 top 10s, never missed a cut in any of his 23 PGA Tour starts a season ago. It's why you can feel pretty comfortable even with a plus 550 price. So, Davis, allow us to sweat. It's one of the beauties about golf betting on a week-to-week basis on the PGA Tour. Instead of taking a team that's probably going to finish at 5-12 to begin an NFL season at 120-1, and then to see that future have zero life or value throughout an NFL season, you can bet a guy at 100-1 to win on the PGA Tour, and 4 days later, you might have profitability with that ticket. So if you were going some of the bigger prices for the American Express this week out in La Quinta, where might we find some big plus money prices on the board?
All right, so we've got a couple that I think you can really start to get down the list. I'm pretty much going to pass up the Jason Day, Chris Kirk, Wyndham Clark, Siwoo Kim range, kind of your 35 to 50-1 range. That is, a lot of the time, that is a pretty profitable range, but I think with the top of this tournament being so strong with Scheffler, Cantlay, Xander, and Sung Jae, I'm going to go right down. I'm going to begin with Aaron Rai at 120-1 on the FanDuel Sportsbook. He's just a guy who profiles pretty well here, a guy who is one of the better ball strikers on the tour. Now, he never makes a putt, but he definitely is a guy that on average is going to gain a lot of strokes off the tee. He's going to gain a lot of strokes approaching the green. That is really a big part of his skill set. So I really like Aaron Rai. Another name that I'm really keeping an eye on is Daniel Berger. And the reason why is Daniel Berger has been injured. He has not played for quite some time. Now, he started out the week when FanDuel released their numbers. He started out as 45-1, obviously an unbettable number. I believe the last time that Daniel Berger played on tour was a miscut at the U.S. Open in 2022, quite some time ago. He's not featured on the PGA Tour since then. However, he slid all the way down to, as of right now, 90-1 on the FanDuel Sportsbook. I would maybe be a little bit tempted there, but I think we might get a number even a little bit better than that. I think we might end up getting 100-1, 110-1. Again, I still might bet it at 90-1 because I think, like, let's say I had perfect knowledge, like I was Daniel Berger's agent's buddy, and I knew that Daniel Berger was fully healthy and feeling great. You know, he's been meditating and getting his protein in. Like he's in a great mental place. So Daniel Berger, 100-1, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more long shots when we get back from break.
Sat down with Nick Saban for a lengthy interview. You have spoken to Nick Saban multiple times throughout his career. How surprised were you?
I mean, he's not going anywhere, I don't believe. And at the end of the day, very surprised. Athletic department surprised. Talked to a few people, Alabama folks, late last night, early this morning. Very surprised. Didn't see it coming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev. Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I don't
favorite.
care if they win because all we care about is the money, baby. The money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted him out. They still wanted him gone.
Mike Shula, you're replacing
was
him?
a disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those two plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars have, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression. Not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
And then there were 8. The final 8 around the National Football League, still in the hunt for a Lombardi Trophy to end out the 2023 NFL season. We are on to the divisional round weekend in the NFL playoffs. And Davis, frankly, I think it's one of the best weekends of football that we see. 2 games on Saturday, both of the 1 seeds after the opening round off, now into the action here in the postseason, and 2 great games on Sunday as well. So we take this time after Super Wild Card weekend to reset where things are from a futures perspective. Here are the matchups first and foremost on divisional weekend. Both of the 1 seeds in action on Saturday. The Houston Texans will take the trip to Baltimore for the first divisional game of this weekend. The Ravens in this matchup against those Texans booked as an 8.5-point favorite. Both of the 1 seeds greater than a touchdown favorite in their game because the nightcap on Saturday, the 49ers will host the Packers, a 9.5-point spread in favor of San Francisco. Now to the 2 games on Sunday. Because the Cowboys lost, the Detroit Lions will host their second consecutive home playoff game. For the first time in 30 years, they hosted a playoff game last weekend. Now their second straight Sunday hosting a playoff game. The Lions booked as a 6-point favorite against the Buccaneers in the marquee matchup of the divisional weekend in Western New York on Sunday night. The Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs, once again, a 2.5-point spread in favor of the Bills at home. Davis, as you look at the 4 matchups for this divisional weekend ahead, which one intrigues you the most?
I mean, Buffalo, Kansas City, I think it's probably the marquee game. It's going to be the tightest spread. It's going to be the one that could go in either direction. I mean, the Ravens rightfully are quite large favorites over the Houston Texans. I mean, that would be one of the biggest stories in the modern NFL if the Houston Texans did win that road game and ended up in the AFC Conference Championship. As with CJ Stroud this is a team that just the turnaround for the Houston Texans hiring DeMeco Ryans, and DeMeco Ryans, by the way, having the foresight to hire Bobby Slowick. I mean, he really took a chance on Bobby Slowick. It's not like hiring, Brian Schottenheimer to be your offensive coordinator where no one's going to look at you sideways. Like, that was a real leap for them. The 2 AFC games really just are more interesting. The 49ers are going to beat the Packers. And, as I said earlier, I can see paths for the Buccaneers beating the Lions. The Lions, I don't know, Ben. Maybe I am just too down on the Packers, the Lions, and the Buccaneers. But I feel like there just is no drama with the Cowboys and the Eagles losing in these NFC games. Like, sure, maybe we do get a great, Baker Mayfield, the last minute throws a touchdown to Mike Evans, his outstretched hands, and then their reward is being, what would they be, 10.5-point dogs to the 49ers in the NFC Conference Championship, probably. Like, it just doesn't feel that interesting on the NFC side of the bracket.
Listen, San Francisco was always primed to be in a really good position throughout this postseason run. Dallas, huge questions about what they do when the games are actually significant, proven once again on Sunday against the Green Bay Packers. The Eagles on a hefty slide. The Lions hadn't won a playoff game prior to Sunday since January of 1992. But we see that reflected in the odds even more, how favorable this path is to another Super Bowl appearance for San Francisco. The 49ers, Davis, minus 180 to win the NFC title at this moment. Nearly a $2 odds-on favorite before they have even played a playoff game here in the 2023 campaign, booked as a 9.5-point favorite. We'll dive into the early lines here on this Tuesday on the early line up next. But this is the future forecast, a reset after Super Wild Card weekend before the divisional round. So San Francisco sits in that prime position in the NFC, an odds-on favorite who is a plus 175 favorite, Davis, to win Super Bowl 58. Nearly $1 in front of Baltimore, the Ravens plus 270. Buffalo plus 490. Kansas City 7-1. The Lions a 9-1 number. Those are the 5 best odds before we get into the large drop-offs. To Green Bay, 30-1, and the Buccaneers and the Texans tied for the longest prices at this moment at 33-1. So how do you view those Super Bowl odds with only 8 teams left in the running for that Lombardi Trophy?
I mean, I think they're probably right. I actually would make the Lions a little bit deeper just because, again, I think they would be I think they would be like a legit they'd be a touchdown dog to the 49ers. I actually think the Ravens are probably bettable at this price. The Bills are pretty banged up. They lost multiple defenders in that game. Their starting slot corner suffered a concussion. He's now on a short week, from Monday to Sunday, trying to get back. That'll be a pretty big deal against Kansas City because they do throw, so much of their offense is throwing the ball short. Like every time they throw the ball long, it's just McCole Hardman pulling up on a deep ball and just refusing to run it out for whatever reason. And the Ravens, to me, are just a tier better than both the Bills and the Chiefs. Like, the concerns you have about the Chiefs, okay, the defense is good. They have no one reliable outside of Rashee Rice. No disrespect to Travis Kelce, but he's 34 years old, and he's starting to move like he's 34 years old. And the Bills, I mean, the Bills have all the talent in the world on offense, but it's like you just can't explain to me things like they get a 2-point home win against the Chargers and they lose a home game to Zach Wilson, right? Like it's really, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's coaching. I don't know if it's scheme. I am not, the paycheck, my paycheck would have to be higher for me to understand all of the things that go on with the Buffalo Bills, but something is not quite right there. And you just don't feel that way about the Ravens at all. You watch the Ravens play and you're like, all right, they know exactly who they are. They know exactly what they're doing on defense. They know exactly what they're doing on offense. They might even be getting Mark Andrews back in this game against the Texans. And if not for the Texans game, almost for sure for the AFC Conference Championship. Like they will be, what do you think? Probably 4-point favorites against either the Ravens or the Chiefs, whoever gets there.
Yeah. I would say so. Baltimore has been booked as a favorite in all but 3 games this year, and that included the Week 18 regular season finale against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The previous 2 times Baltimore was booked as a favorite with their full roster in action. Christmas night against the Niners in Santa Clara. We know how that game went. The Ravens winning outright with an emphatic a multiple touchdown victory on the road in Santa Clara in week number 2 against the Cincinnati Bengals on the road as well. Every other game the Ravens have been booked as a favorite. I would expect at least north of a field goal, Davis, even against the Buffalo Bills or the Kansas City Chiefs in Baltimore. The Ravens this weekend, an 8.5-point favorite. The San Francisco 49ers this weekend, a 9.5-point favorite against Green Bay. I would say one thing that stands out to me about the Super Bowl 58 odds is not really the top 5. It's that team with the 6th best number, the Packers, who are actually the largest underdog of the weekend, getting 9.5 points from the 49ers, and yet Green Bay, who is least likely to advance based on the odds from the divisional weekend, has a better price than even Tampa, who is only a 6-point road underdog in Detroit, and a better number than even the Houston Texans, who are an 8.5-point underdog against the Baltimore Ravens. So only 8 teams left, Davis, in the running for the Super Bowl championship this year. We could even take it a step further from the team perspective down to those individuals. Lamar Jackson is the Super Bowl MVP favorite at plus 320, half a dollar in front of Brock Purdy. I find that interesting as well because, again, San Francisco as a team has a better price to win Super Bowl 58 than Baltimore, and yet Baltimore's quarterback has a better price than San Francisco's quarterback. And I think, Davis, that is because Christian McCaffrey has that 5th best number at 8-1. The perception around the 49ers, even though it's been debunked multiple times on this show and really across the media landscape, is Brock Purdy is not just a system quarterback, but it is still how he is seen from the odds perspective, to which Christian McCaffrey could take that Super Bowl MVP award away from Purdy if the Niners are the eventual champs.
So this is my pushback to that, Ben. To close your eyes, go back in time. The San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs are playing each other in the Super Bowl. Damian Williams leads that game in yards from scrimmage. He scores the go-ahead touchdown for the Kansas City Chiefs on a pretty impressive play, reaching the ball across the pylon. The game's getting a little bit tight. It's in the fourth quarter. It's 2nd and 7. Chiefs really need a first down. They really want to burn some clock. They don't want to be throwing the ball. Damian Williams makes a defender miss, rips off a 40-yard run, correctly kneels down so that the Chiefs can run the ball out. They can win the game. Patrick Mahomes, 2 touchdowns in that game. And the voters didn't even think. It was unanimous that Mahomes won Super Bowl MVP in that game.
Right.
Damian Williams was the rightful Super Bowl MVP. You have to have, like, McCaffrey to win over Purdy, or honestly, even his teammates, Debo and Ayuk. I was looking up the odds. I think Debo is the better Super Bowl MVP bet than either of them right now. But to win over Purdy, he would have to have something like, I think he might have to score 4 touchdowns, actually. Like, I think even 3, they still might give it to Purdy.
That's why I think when you look at the quarterback narrative behind any MVP award, pretty much at any level of football, it is really interesting to see CMC at 8-1 when Brock Purdy is the quarterback for the Super Bowl favorite San Francisco 49ers at a plus 175 price as a team, plus 370 for Purdy, only 50 cents behind Lamar Jackson at plus 320. On the early line, it's the early line for divisional weekend. Up next. Sat down with Nick Saban for a lengthy interview. You have spoken to Nick Saban multiple times throughout his career. How surprised were you?
I mean, he's not going anywhere, I don't believe. And at the end of the day, very surprised. Athletic department surprised. Talked to a few people, Alabama folks, late last night, early this morning. Very surprised. Didn't see it coming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev. Go run, run, run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, we saw a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I don't
favorite.
care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted him out. They still wanted him gone.
Mike Shula, you
Mike
replacing
Shula was
him?
a disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those 2 plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars have, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression. Not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Live right here on this Tuesday on the early line. We look at the early lines for divisional round weekend in the National Football League postseason. Super Wild Card weekend now in the books. The 8 teams still in the hunt for a Lombardi Trophy. 4 games over 2 days. A doubleheader on Saturday, a doubleheader on Sunday. The 1 seeds in both the AFC and the NFC now into the action and in the fold as well. But Davis, we start with the final of the 4 games on divisional weekend. It's the marquee matchup. In Buffalo, the Bills and the Chiefs, once again for a spot in the AFC Championship game. Of course, it calls back our memories of that wonderful divisional round game from 2 playoffs ago. Many, as you said, Davis, earlier on in this show, one of the best football games in the modern era of the NFL. This time, though, the difference, Patrick Mahomes will play in his first true road game in his playoff career, as Josh Allen in the Bills will play host to the Chiefs. Buffalo booked as a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under is 46.5. Davis, where do you expect the market to move by the time we get to Sunday evening in Orchard Park?
I think it stays here. I would be incredibly surprised to see it go to 3.5. I mean, maybe it goes to 3. 3.5 would be disrespectful. I mean, that would be real disrespect to Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Mahomes in his career has a 75% winning percentage on the road, right? So not overall on the road. Mahomes as a dog or as a pick'em. Obviously, he's got the best covering percentage of any active quarterback in the NFL. He's not a dog all that often. I don't believe the Mahomes Chiefs have ever been more than a 4-point dog. I think that is correct. Mahomes is 8th all time at 28 years old in postseason wins as a quarterback. So that's pretty impressive. That is a lot of wins to have racked up by being 28 years old. All of that is to say, there are a lot of reasons for the Kansas City Chiefs to feel confident that not only can they cover this spread, but that they can win this game outright. But there are also a lot of reasons when you watch them to not be confident. One being they already lost to this team 2 months ago, and they did so in a way that did not make you feel like, oh, they just got unlucky. You know, it was more like, I don't see how this team scores enough points. And we even saw it against the Dolphins. You know, obviously I live in the Midwest, and I am around a lot of Chiefs fans. And, you know, my buddies, we're in the group chat. We're like, oh, we're filing our petition with the We're So Back department, you know? And I'm like, well, yeah, you look better. You're playing well, but it's not quite right. You know, it's not the high-flying Chiefs. It's not they can score a touchdown at any moment. The sequence that I obviously cannot get out of my mind for the Chiefs is the game against the Raiders on Christmas, where they give the ball away twice, defensive turnovers, you know, immediately, and they can't do anything on offense, Ben. AOC could not complete a pass, and it's like an 8-minute drive for Harrison Butker to miss a field goal, you know, and they're just like, it's like Sisyphus pushing the rock uphill. And obviously they were better than that against the Dolphins, but they still couldn't put the biscuit in the basket at the end. Harrison Butker made 5 field goals in that game. Rashee Rice had a touchdown waved off. Kelsey dropped one in the end zone. Like it's getting better, but it's not quite right.
It certainly is not from the offensive perspective. Of course, they relied on the ground game. They relied on Isaiah Pacheco on Saturday night in the frigid cold temperatures in Arrowhead. I'm not sure what the forecast is just yet for Sunday evening in Buffalo. I do not expect it to be a nice, crisp evening there as well. To your point, Davis, 13 times since Patrick Mahomes became the starting quarterback for the Chiefs at the beginning of the 2018 NFL season, has Kansas City been booked as an underdog. Only 13 times in the last 6 NFL seasons. Just once this year, and Mahomes wasn't the starter. It was Blaine Gabbert making the start in the regular season finale in LA against the Chargers. The Chiefs actually won that game outright. But in the previous 12, with Patrick Mahomes as the starting quarterback, as the underdog side, the Chiefs, an above 500 record outright 7-5. Now, the Buffalo Bills have beaten the Chiefs in Arrowhead each of the past 3 NFL regular seasons. Of course, the ultimate difference, though, that overtime game when Josh Allen did not get to come out on the football field. That would not be the case here in the 2024 NFL postseason because of the overtime rules. The Chiefs victorious there. The Buffalo Bills have won the AFC East each of the past 4 NFL seasons. They have only been to the conference championship game 1 time. The last 3 years, they have not gotten past the divisional round. That will be the charge for Buffalo this time around. So a 2.5-point spread in favor of the Bills, the over-under 46.5. Again, Buffalo right now plus 470 to win Super Bowl 58. Kansas City over $2 back at a 7-1 number. The number 1 overall seed in the AFC, the Baltimore Ravens, after the bye weekend to start off the NFL playoffs, will kick off divisional round weekend on Saturday in the Charm City as the Flock plays host to the Houston Texans. 8.5-point number here, Davis, for this matchup between the Ravens and the Texans. As you look at the over-under for this football game, the number right now stands at 45.5. Of course, the Texans have been great as an underdog this year, 7-3 against the spread. Baltimore not all that shabby as a favorite as well. Will the game be more competitive than that 8.5-point spread might say?
I think you'll know sort of early, right? It feels like maybe by like the 3rd drive, you'll be like, okay, we're going to be in for a game here or we won't. If the game starts out, Devin Singletary to the left guard for -1 yard, pass intended for Dalton Schultz, short right, is incomplete. 3rd down, CJ Stroud takes a sack. Then you're like, oh, brother, this is not trending in the direction. Kind of like last night, actually, where I mean, right away, I was like, oh, the Eagles are not winning this game. I mean, they are just, the Eagles, they punted on 4th and 2. And I was like, really? You're punting? I mean, I don't care where it is on the field. You're the Philadelphia Eagles. You're Jalen Hurts. You're Jason Kelsey. You're punting with 2 yards to go. You threw a pass on 3rd and 2nd instead of just running the tush push on 3rd and 2nd. It's like, I just kind of think that is not the direction that it needs to go. So I feel good about CJ Stroud, kind of figuring things out on the fly versus the Baltimore Ravens defense. Like I actually have a lot of faith in his ability, but he's coming into this battle undermanned. Their offensive line is worse. Their pass catchers, I mean, Nico Collins has been fantastic, but they're missing Tank Dell. So it's like Noah Brown, Robert Woods, John Mechie, Xavier Hutchinson. Dalton Schultz is like a good tight end, but he's not even as good as Isaiah Likely, who is the 2nd tight end, for the Baltimore Ravens. I weirdly enough, I know Singletary has been so strong this year, but I would feel better about the Texans' rushing attack if it was based on someone who wasn't so dependable like Singletary, which is obviously what the coaching staff likes about him, but was someone more explosive. So if Dameon Pierce, I thought, was going to get 17 carries in this game, I don't think I want to lay 8. Maybe if I had to bet right now, it would be Ravens -8.5. I don't feel that strongly about it.
Yeah.
Like it feels like the right number to me, but 8.5 is a lot for a playoff game for a divisional round, but like the Ravens are so good and they're so rested now, like they feels like the Ravens always end every season so banged up. They haven't played a serious football game in 3 weeks. Like these dudes' bodies are feeling great.
The practice window officially open for Mark Andrews to return as well. We await his status for this divisional round weekend in the opener in Baltimore. The Ravens this year as a favorite, 9-5 against the spread, a touchdown or greater favorite, just 1-3 against the number. Their only cover was way back in their season opener. Against who? These Houston Texans. 25-9 was the final in favor of the Ravens. They covered as a 9.5-point favorite, but very different teams then than both of the teams that enter the second round of the NFL playoffs. We will see history on Saturday night in Santa Clara, the 10th all-time postseason meeting between the Green Bay Packers and the San Francisco 49ers. That now, Davis, the most ever playoff matchups between two franchises in NFL postseason history. And the 49ers are booked as a 9.5-point favorite. The over-under is the highest of the weekend. It stands at 50 between Green Bay and San Francisco. The Packers, of course, pulled off the stunner on the road in Dallas. What do you think their chances are of maybe doing something similar in Santa Clara?
Not good. Way worse. I actually picked the Green Bay Packers. I did. I bet them. Much to my dad. My dad is a big Dallas Cowboys fan, and I was texting him on Sunday. Like, he's like, I feel bad for you. I grew up a Dallas Cowboys fan, Ben, and about the time I was 22 years old, I was like, enough. I've had enough of this. It's just I don't. The Dallas Cowboys never did anything good for me. They never won a playoff game ever. It's just like I don't need it in my life anymore. So the Packers, I think, they are just riding high right now. I mean, they are the youngest team in the NFL. They have all these great young pass catchers: Wicks, Dobbs. Watson, the second round pick, it's like, doesn't even matter that he stinks. Doesn't even matter that he can't stay healthy. They don't have to pay him if they don't want to. He can just go play for someone else. He can hit free agency. Jordan Love, remember he signed that extension really early. Jordan Love is the 31st highest paid quarterback in the NFL right now. Isn't that nuts? So it's all gravy for them. The 49ers are the Death Star. They're the Empire. If you look at a lot of the advanced stuff, DVOA, EPA on both sides of the ball, the regular season that they just did is like one of the 3 greatest regular seasons of all time in like the history of the NFL. I'm not picking against them. I just am not going to.
Yeah, I think it's hard to make that assessment right now. Final game of the divisional round weekend is the first game of the doubleheader on Sunday. The Lions had not hosted a playoff game since January of 1994 up until this season. And now, for the second time in 3 decades, another home playoff game inside Ford Field. Detroit booked as a 6-point home favorite against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Of course, it was the Lions' first playoff victory, Davis, since 1991's NFL season on Sunday night. Will they make it their second in the past 32 years?
No one has ever sent a text message about a Detroit Lions playoff win until last week. That was one of the best stats that came out. I mean, I am definitely going to pick the Buccaneers against the spread. The Lions, obviously probably win a huge chunk of the time. So, good for them. But I don't feel confident about them making it to the eventual Super Bowl.
Detroit this year, 10-5 against the number. It was the only game during Super Wildcard weekend. The Lions and the Rams decided, of course, by just a single point. That was decided by less than 2 touchdowns. Meanwhile, for Tampa Bay, 9-3 against the spread as the underdog this year. We'll talk about disappointing seasons up next. Sat down with Nick Saban for a lengthy interview. You have spoken to Nick Saban multiple times throughout his career. How surprised were you?
I mean, he's not going anywhere, I don't believe. And at the end of the day, very surprised. Athletic department surprised. Talked to a few people, Alabama folks, late last night, early this morning. Very surprised. Didn't see it coming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Quarterback at quarterback. We're going to lay some juice. We're going to have some dog prices, and we're going to go right in the middle.
Because I don't know what they're doing. To me, they're in a complete rebuild, Kev. Go run. That's where overbackers on this 51.5 shot.
So right now, he's a little bit more over money, but it's hovering right around.
The winner of this game will be the division
I don't care if they win, because all we care about is the money, baby, the money.
Pro Football Today. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the book.
This is one of the hardest jobs in all of football. You are replacing Bear Bryant. You are replacing Nick Saban. You are replacing guys who won national championships, and they still wanted them out. They still wanted them gone.
Mike Shula, you're
Mike Shula
replacing
was a
him.
disaster. Dubos was a disaster.
Gene Stallings.
That's what I mean. They ran him out. He won a national championship, and they ran Gene Stallings out.
The Bostonian versus the book.
Good move by the Clippers, and obviously, folks, they have Tyronn Lue, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league. And I'll say this right now, folks, the way they're playing, I know Minnesota's in first. I know Oklahoma City's been great. I know Denver's been fantastic. But the team I'm thinking right now that could actually come out of the West, if they stay healthy, and he keeps playing like that, it's Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
What did you think when you saw Lawrence on 3rd and 4th down, those two plays?
When you have a meltdown like the Jaguars have, the clear favorite coming into the season, we all know that, and they choke like they did, and they have this fall like they did, people are going to question what's wrong with Trevor Lawrence. He had a regression. It's not a major one, but he was not as good as last season. What's happened to the play calling?
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
I am not a Cowboys fan. I did not have a Cowboys ticket on this game. I bet the over, but I'm frustrated watching this game. I'm frustrated seeing the Dallas Cowboys think that this is their optimal game plan.
In-game live, prime time. Only on SportsGrid.
SportsGrid, the only streaming sports betting network. Tips, info, and insights to up your IQ. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
We end out hour number 2 of the Early Line Live right here on this Tuesday on SportsGrid. It's Ben Stevens, it's Davis Maddock, and of course it's the SportsGrid app, the ultimate sports betting companion app, available for download at both the Apple and the Play Store. Quickly scan that QR code on your screen for all of our information and insight. For 8 teams, they move on to the divisional round of the NFL postseason that starts on Saturday. For 24 others, it's already the playoffs. And Davis, for 12 teams that played on Super Wild Card Weekend, 2 probably had the most disappointing exits. The Dallas Cowboys on Sunday at the Star. The Eagles, a downfall to end out this year, put on display on Monday night in Tampa. Who had the more disappointing season in 2023? That was the question in Fade the Public. At SportsGrid TV on Twitter. And Davis, in my days, I have seen many a Fade the Public poll. I have not seen many that have featured nearly 500 votes from the people out there, but that's where we stand right now at SportsGrid TV on Twitter. Whose season was more disappointing, the Eagles or the Cowboys? And more than 59% of the public, Davis, saying that Philly's year was more of a disaster. Get Donnie off the screen. He already knows his Philadelphia Eagles were disappointing.
Yeah, I think it is the Eagles. Their expectations were higher coming into the year. The low was lower. The Cowboys end the season like, oh, Dak, he's going to get some MVP votes. Maybe he finishes second in the MVP. There's some people who said maybe he deserves it more than Lamar. And, weirdly, the Packers played well enough, that it felt like it wasn't just the Cowboys blowing it, although they did. Yeah. I mean, the Eagles really blew it.
The Packers took it to the Cowboys. Not that the Buccaneers did not last night, but the Eagles looked stagnant and stale, and their offseason, the same for the Cowboys, very much up in the air. We continue that conversation when hour 3 starts in less than a minute.